declare this to be an unlawful assembly.
In the summer of rage, they're building mass graves within the states. You and I, they'll vaccinate. They're preparing us for an all-out police state. Your world is going wild. Can't trust nothing but the love in your mind's eyes. Salvation's in your smile. Just wish I could be alive to see the whole river rise.
Keep the shields up front if you can. Move the units down forward slowly. Test encirclement.
Finding all info warriors.
Neighbors gotta speak loud, they try to silence. Withhold, they try
Go to Pittsburgh now with video cameras.
your world is going wild. Can't trust nothing but the love in your mind's eyes. Salvation's in your smile. Just wish I could be alive. See that whole river rise.
Republic is falling right now.
World leaders arriving in Pittsburgh for the G20 summit are finding a city on lockdown.
The next moment, my eardrums were blasting, and as that happened, I basically turned around, saw now 40 riot police assisted by military.
They're closing in. Run! Get out! I told you!
This is why police take what's left.
You must leave immediately.
This was the talk of the town in Hardin on Thursday. Mercedes decked out in the City of Hardin Police Department decals and driven by American Police Force members.
We're not disclosing the name of our parent company.
We know the guy that owns the company, but we've never seen this name before.
Excuse me, you just dropped a bomb on us. This is Red Dawn, foreign mercenary group admitted, driving around doing police work with Hardin Police next to their American Police Force logos. This is insane.
Passengers describe a terror attack and the arrest of a suspect.
So he's a controlled asset, and of course it's not a matter of failure to connect the dots. The FBI now has 5 versions of their story.
Can you add how they were already getting in Yemen? That's now confirmed.
The scanning machines that we currently are beginning to deploy.
He told me to go through the scanner, and I said no. It's a real act of submission. They were involved in a cover-up. Kurt, this is huge.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency coordinates the federal government's role in preparing for, preventing, mitigating the effects of, responding to, and recovering from all domestic disasters, whether natural or man-made, including acts of terror. Its beginnings can be traced to disaster legislation passed in 1803 to provide assistance to a New Hampshire town following a fire. Following a string of natural disasters in the 60s and 70s, President Jimmy Carter signed Executive Order 12127 and merged nearly 10 federal agencies into what we now know as FEMA. In March 2003, FEMA joined 22 other federal agencies to become part of Homeland Security. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit the Gulf Coast and most notably the city of New Orleans. Federal and local authorities encouraged those who could not evacuate the city to go to the Superdome to ride out the storm, where there would be assistance to take care of them. This is how your government cares for you. This is a FEMA camp.
And that's all we're hearing about are the people in New Orleans. Those are the only ones that we're seeing on television are the scumbags who were left in New Orleans or who decided to stay in New Orleans, and they're getting all of the attention.
I have made 3 police state films. I have also, written books and news articles on the subject. And the problem is when you cover FEMA camps is there's so much evidence, so many congressional hearings, so many news articles, so many documents. The problem is knowing where to start. Executive orders. This is how they introduce you. See, they're introducing it all. They've denied they're building all this for all these decades. Now as they unveil it, they're putting their PR spin on it. So Executive Order 10,990 allows the government to take over all modes of transportation and control of highways and seaports. That's been reaffirmed under PDD 51, under the John Warner Defense Authorization Act and others. Executive Order 10,995 allows the government to seize and control the communication media. Executive Order 10,997 allows the government to take over all electrical power, gas, petroleum, fuels, and minerals. Executive Order 10,998 allows the government to seize all means of transportation, including personal cars, trucks, and vehicles of any kind, and total control over all highways, seaports, and waterways. Executive Order 10999 allows the government to take over all food resources and farms. Executive Order 11,000 allows the government to mobilize civilians into work brigades under government supervision. Executive Order 11,001 allows the government to take over all health, education, and welfare functions. What's happening through the imploded economy that the foreign central banks are engineering? So they make you be beholden to the government. Designates the Postmaster General to operate a national registration of all persons. That goes on through the Selective Service. Executive Order 11003 allows the government to take over all airports, aircraft, including commercial aircraft. Remember when they shut down all flights after 9/11? Executive Order 11004 allows the Housing and Finance Authority to relocate communities, build new housing with public funds, designate areas to be abandoned, and establish new locations for populations. Remember Louisiana, Mississippi, Katrina?
Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job. The FEMA director is working 24 hours.
Executive Order 11005 allows the government to take over all railroads, inland waterways, and public storage facilities. Executive Order 11,051 specifies the responsibility of the Office of Emergency Planning and gives authorization to put all executive orders into effect in times of increased international tensions and economic or financial crises. Executive Order 11,310 grants authority to the Department of Justice to enforce the plans set out in executive orders, to institute industrial support, to establish judicial and legislative liaison, to control all aliens, to operate penal and correctional institutions, and to advise and assist the president. So that's your FEMA camps. Executive Order 11,049 assigns emergency preparedness functions to federal departments and agencies, consolidating 21 operational executive orders issued at 15-year period. Executive Order 11,921 allows the Federal Emergency Preparedness Agency to develop plans to establish control over the mechanisms of production and distribution of energy sources, wage salaries, credit, and the flow of money in U.S. financial institution. In any undefined national emergency, it also provides that when a state of emergency is declared by the President, Congress cannot review the action for 6 months. PDD 51 says never. Up on screen are photocopies of the Miami Herald, and this goes back into the 1980s when they had congressional hearings dealing with shadow government and martial law. There's the headline, The Secret Government. And it talks about secret summits, a plan to take over the government. And it shows the people that were in charge of the continuity of government, Dick Cheney and others. And then we have a congressional hearing where we have Congressman Jack Brooks and others during Iran-Contra bringing up the secret plans, and they're told by Congressman Inouye that that can't be discussed. It's a national security issue.
In the 1980s, the concentration camp program got a big boost.
Colonel North, in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster?
Mr. Chairman.
I believe that question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, so may I request that you not touch upon that, sir.
I was particularly concerned, Mr. Chairman, because I read in Miami papers and several others that there had been a plan developed by that same agency, a contingency plan in the event of emergency that would suspend the American Constitution. And I was deeply concerned about it and wondered if that was the area in which he had worked. I believe that it was.
May I most respectfully request that that matter not be touched upon at this stage. If we wish to get into this, I'm certain arrangements can be made for an executive session.
And tragically, the only member who got close was Jack Brooks, and he was stopped by the chairman. But the truth of the matter is that, yes, you do have those standby provisions, and the plans are there, and the statutory emergency plans are there, whereby you could, in the name of stopping terrorism, apprehend, invoke the military, and arrest Americans and hold them in detention camps.
Throughout history, criminals get control of governments. They use phony crises to enslave the public. And they're taking your pension funds, they're taking your money, they're raising the taxes on you, they are going to squeeze the daylights out of us all, and that's why they're geared up for martial law and to take the media over, because this is quite a gamble by the establishment. You know, we should have grand juries indicting the bankers and having them turn states' evidence against each other, and this whole criminal shadow government, national security state should be exposed. Everything it's engineered and bring in total tyranny and start arresting people for their speech. So it either goes into tyranny or into liberty. And believe me, folks, liberty is probably where it's going, because this tyranny is so horrible they've got planned. Let's go ahead and go to Congressman a year and a half ago on the Homeland Security Board wanting to know about PDD 51. Now, this fight went on for a year. The cover sheet of Presidential Decision Directive 51 stated the president's a dictator. Congress has no power during any emergency, including economic. So now Congress isn't involved in continuity of government when Congress is co-equal to the president and the courts. In fact, the Founding Fathers said Congress was above the courts and the president, but then later courts said, no, they're equal. Now they're saying they're not. Okay? Because it's harder for a dictator to take control in the Congress because there's 500 people. Separation of powers. The president is where your main dictator will come from, so it's the weakest. It follows the orders of Congress and then executes those orders. But then the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee said, I am co-equal with the president in national security. Let me see PDD 51. And they were told no. But the cover sheet alone states the president's a dictator. Then we see last year PDD 51 being executed, and members of Congress, Senator Inhofe and others, being told martial law will be declared if you don't hand total control and immunity over to the banks. And they followed orders and did it. So the martial law is now in place. And with that comes the FEMA camps. Will we get to that place? Not if we expose it. But we're already got our neck in the noose here. Is the executioner going to pull the lever? I don't know. Let's continue with the congressman talking about PDD 51.
Most Americans would agree that it would be prudent to have a plan to provide for the continuity of government and the rule of law in case of a devastating terrorist attack or natural disaster. A plan to provide for the cooperation, the coordination, and continued functioning of all three branches of the government. The Bush administration tells us they have such a plan. They introduced a little sketchy public version that's clearly inadequate and doesn't really tell us what they have in mind. But they said, don't worry, there's a detailed classified version. But now they've denied the entire Homeland Security Committee of the United States House of Representatives access to their so-called detailed plan to provide for continuity of government. They say, trust us. Trust us, the people who brought us Katrina, to be competent in face of a disaster. Trust us, the people who brought us warrantless wiretapping and other excesses eroding our civil liberties. Trust us. Maybe the plan just really doesn't exist, and that's why they won't show it to us. I don't know. Or maybe there's something there that's outrageous. The American people need their elected representatives to review this plan for the continuity of government.
All right, that's Congressman Peter DeFazio. Now, that was a year and a half ago. Mr. DeFazio, the cover sheet says the president's a dictator and that Congress has no authority over continuity of government. That's why they're now saying Congress can't see it, because they're declaring and executing that power. Now, we fast forward a year plus to October 3rd, and here is Congressman Sherman, who we interviewed here on air, other congressmen we interviewed, and Senator Inhofe, saying they marched in and told them martial law will be declared if you don't do this. So we go from the 80s to where don't talk about the martial law plans and the FEMA camps. If you want to know about that, you can know about it in executive session, Congressman Jack Brooks, to, oh, Congress, you're not allowed to see the plans now. To Congress, do what we say, we're under martial law.
The only way they can pass this bill is by creating and sustaining a panic atmosphere. That atmosphere is not justified. Many of us were told in private conversations that if we voted against this bill on Monday, that the sky would fall, the market would drop 2,000 or 3,000 points the first day, another couple thousand the second day, and a few members were even told that there would be martial law in America if we voted no. That's what I call fear-mongering.
So we have the congressman on with us. We only have him for 5 minutes, 6 minutes. Congressman Brad Sherman, thank you for coming on, sir.
Good to be with you. You know, Wall Street used these panic tactics to get us to pass this $700 billion, well, what the bill really is $700 billion in unmarked bills. They said the market would drop by 4,000 points, blood would flow in the streets, and lions would be devouring children in the parks of Los Angeles. Now that the bill is passed, our economy is still going to be very bad.
The bailout money so far has been set aside to buy shares in banks, $250 billion, $40 billion to AIG, and $60 billion yet to be committed, leaving the remaining $350 billion for future use.
We've got to do everything we can to focus people's attention on this bill as it's carried out, because it allows Paulson to go up to Wall Street. He can give money to one firm. He cannot return phone calls from another firm. He can he can, if he finds out which firms are donating to the 527 organizations, which take secret contributions and then make political advertising. He can look at the RNC donor list. He can do anything he wants.
Let's go back to what you said on the floor in the last 24 hours about members of Congress, and I've talked to some. They're afraid to even come on and talk about it, being told there will be martial law in America and we'll just do this with or without you if you don't do this. That is incredible. And I just had the former head of the Treasury on earlier, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts from Reagan, had a policy saying that this gives them economic martial law. Is that not terrorism? Is not the definition to threaten harm or carry out harm for a political aim, sir?
Well, but keep in mind, we passed the bill, and I'm told the market is down.
Sir, here's the $64 million question. You and other members of Congress say, yeah, well, there were some people threatening martial law, but we don't think they meant it. They were just trying to fearmonger, which I call terrorism, into it. That's a huge issue. Specifically, sir, we need to know names. Who told you that they were told that martial law and blood in the streets, as you said, would happen?
Private conversations between members on the floor, you really can't reveal without the permission of the other party.
I understand, but were there arm twisters coming up, or were they scared? I mean, how was it said specifically?
What we have to do is expose those circumstances where we're bailing out a particular firm, and how many of the executives at that firm are continuing to make $1 million a year, $5 million a year, $20 million a year. There's going to be a lot of information that is not public, and it's going to take investigative reporters to find out things that congressmen can't find out and that the public is not going to be aware of. I have to go right now, but it's been a pleasure being with you.
Somebody in D.C. was feeding you guys quite a story prior to the bailout, a story that if we didn't do this, we were going to see something on the scale of the Depression. There were people that were talking about, martial law being instituted, civil unrest, all this kind of stuff. Who was feeding you this information?
That's Henry Paulson. We had a conference call early on. It was on a Friday, I think a week and a half before the vote on October 1st. So it would have been the middle, 19th of September, we had a conference call.